Imagine seeing your friend or family member and knowing that's them and then realizing it was never them. Because this is 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? So why not give you guys a story time? So let's not waste no time and let's get into it. For this story, we're going to call her Bella. So Bella believes that she has a lot of mimic activity going on and that something is following her. Because not only did this happen at one house, it happened at two houses. So the first house she lived in, it was Bella's mom, and it was her 3-year-old daughter. So also at her house is her friend Jessica because she's spending the night that night. It's getting late into the night, so Bella ended up going upstairs to put her daughter to bed. So while Bella is putting her daughter to bed, she overhears Jessica on the phone. Long story short, Jessica decides she is not going to spend the night and she's going to go visit another friend. So Bella's still in the room putting her daughter to sleep. So she hears the front door open and she knows that Jessica is leaving because she's about to go see another friend. So as Bella's still putting her daughter to sleep, she noticed Jessica walk into the bedroom that's across from her, which is their computer room. So Jessica walks in, she sits down on the computer, and she didn't say anything. So Bella tried to whisper her name because she doesn't want to wake up her daughter. Jessica didn't say anything. So Bella turns her head back to look at her daughter. She notices her daughter is asleep. So she turns back to look at Jessica to tell Jessica, hey, come on, let's go. Jessica still did not respond, so she walks over into the bedroom, turned the light on to see that no one is in there. Bella said that scared her to death, and to this day, she does not know how to explain it or what even really happened. But she knows she saw someone in that room. Okay, so fast forward, Bella ended up moving into a new house. It's the same people. It's Bella, it's her daughter, it's Bella's mom, and also now Bella's boyfriend is living with them. So by this time, it's kind of late. It's like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Bella and her boyfriend end up getting into an argument, and Bella decides to sleep in her mom's room because her mom and her daughter is actually having like a little slumber party sleepover in the living room, so the mom was not in there. So Bella starts to drift off into sleep. And you know how like you're half asleep, half up, you're not all the way asleep? That's the state that she was in. So Bella ended up fully waking up because she felt someone get in the bed behind her, and she also felt a body press against her. So whatever it was started to rub her hair and whisper in her ear, you're alone. So she said it sounds like her boyfriend's voice, and before she even fully heard the voice, she just assumed it was her boyfriend anyway, because who else is getting in the bed behind her? So she turns over to cuddle with her boyfriend face to face. No one's there. She said every hair on her body stood up. She got up and ran out of that room so fast. Bella did say a lot of activity went on in the house. It wasn't just that, it was things that happened way more than that. Now, she did give a backstory on the house that said that it was someone that died inside the house and it was someone that died on the property outside of the house. And to end the story off, y'all, she still lives in the house. So again, y'all, if you guys have any stories that you want to submit to me, you can email it to me. The email is in my bio, or you can DM it to me on here. Until next time, y'all, enjoy this story.
What would you do if you were a little kid staying at your grandmother's house overnight in New Mexico and then hear something outside calling you in a voice that you trusted? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about a woman who said that her Navajo grandmother spent years warning her about the things that lurked outside after dark, and then one night she figured out why. When I was little, my grandma lived out in New Mexico. Her house sat by itself with a long dirt road leading up to it and open land in every direction. During the day, it was beautiful. It had red dirt and dry grass and a big sky and juniper trees. And at night, it felt different. At night, it felt like the land was listening. My grandma was Navajo, and from the time I was old enough to sleep over there by myself, she had rules. You do not whistle after dark, and you do not answer voices outside at night, and you do not go near the tree line once the sun is gone. And if you hear something calling for you from outside, you come get her first. She never said those rules in a joking way. She said them like she was handing me something heavy and expecting me to carry it right. When I was 8, I stayed with her for a week during the summer. I remember one night, especially because it had been hot all day and the house was still holding the heat after sunset. My grandmother had all the windows cracked and one box fan going in the hallway. I was sleeping in the little back room with a quilt too heavy for summer, and before bed she came in, shut the curtain tight, and told me again not to look outside if I heard anything walking around. I asked her what would be walking around. She said something old. Then she turned the lamp off and left. I fell asleep for a while, but then I woke up because I heard somebody outside my window. At first it sounded like slow steps in the dirt, soft and dragging a little. Then it stopped right under the window. I was wide awake after that. I remember laying there staring at the dark ceiling and listening so hard. I kept waiting to hear my grandma's footsteps in the house or the fan in the hall or something normal enough to drown it out. Instead, I heard my mother's voice outside the window, soft at first, but saying my name. My mother was not there. She was back in town more than an hour away. I knew that even as a kid. I knew exactly where she was. That was part of what made my whole body go cold so fast. I pulled the quilt up to my chin and stayed still. Then the voice said my name again, but sweeter this time, telling me to come outside, telling me she needed help. I started crying without meaning to, quiet at first because I didn't want whatever was outside to hear me. And then the thing laughed. It had been using my mother's voice until then, and that laugh was something else. It dropped low in the middle of it and turned into this rough, ugly sound that made every hair on my arms lift. After that, it stopped trying to sound exactly like her. The next time it spoke, the voice still had pieces of my mother in it, though it sounded stretched and spoiled somehow, like it had listened to her a long time and still hadn't gotten it right. It said, "Come here." I squeezed my eyes shut, and then I heard something brush against the side of the house. Slow, like a hand dragging over the wood. I should not have looked. I know that. My grandmother told me not to. I was a kid and scared, and my brain still wanted to make sense of it, so I slid out of bed and went to the window anyway. The curtain was thick, and I only pulled it back a little. There was something standing out there, tall and way too close to the house. At first, all I could make out was a shape, thin shoulders, long arms hanging down, and head bent slightly like it was listening for movement inside. And then the clouds shifted enough for moonlight to hit it. Its face looked almost human for 1 second, and then I saw the mouth. It was too long and split too wide at the corners, and it was wet around the chin. The eyes caught the moon and flashed pale, then black. And the skin looked like it had been pulled tight over a face it did not belong to. It lifted one hand and crooked one finger towards the window, and then it smiled. I screamed so hard, and my grandma was in that room almost instantly. She did not ask me what happened first. She grabbed me, pulled me away from the window, and pushed me behind her. Then she said something I didn't understand back then and still won't repeat now because of the way she said it. Firm and angry, like she was speaking to something she had every reason to hate. Whatever was outside moved. I could hear it circling the house again after that. Quick steps in the dirt, and then stopping, and then another stretch of movement. Once it scraped along the wall near the kitchen, and once it made that same broken version of my mother's voice right outside the back door, asking to be let in. My grandma never opened anything, and she stood there with one hand behind her, keeping me back, and the other lifted slightly, speaking low and steady towards the dark. And at one point, the thing outside let out a sound I still hear in my head sometimes. It wasn't a growl exactly. It sounded closer to a person choking while they laughed. And then it went quiet. We stayed awake until sunrise, and my grandma did not let me out of her sight once. The next morning, she took me outside with her only after the sun had been up a while. She showed me the dirt beneath my window, and there were prints there. I had not seen tracks shaped like that before. They looked almost human in places and then stretched too long at the front. The heel dug deep and the toes were narrow and sharp. Around them, the dirt looked churned up like whatever had stood there had shifted its weight over and over while it waited. Then she showed me the wall. 4 long marks in the wood under the window. Not deep enough to tear through it, but just enough to tell me it had been feeling around for a way in. I asked my grandma what it was, and she looked out towards the trees when I asked, not at me. Then she said, "Something that heard you breathing." I never slept in that back room again, and years later, after my grandma died, my family sold the house. I went back once before it changed owners and stood in the yard where that window had been. The scratches were still there under the paint. I was already walking back to the car when I heard it. Very soft, from the tree line. My mother's voice, saying my name the same way it had that night, and I did not turn around. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
I think I saw the Grim Reaper. Scary story time while I make slime haunted house edition. I know that intro sounds insane, but I do think I saw the Grim Reaper. Oh my gosh, you already know. Get your money's worth in what? Let it drain. We're making clear slime today, so I can't let it drain too much because I don't got a big bowl like that, okay? Pink is gone, so now we have to use blue. I'm sorry, y'all. When I was staying in Georgia, I seen a lot of ghosts. Like, it's not even funny. It's actually uncanny. So basically, this day, I was already having a bad day. I wanted to leave the earth, okay? But your girl also felt strangely protected. And I had asked my mom if she could take me somewhere so I can go get myself some food. I might put a little bit of lotion. Just a little bit. Just, come on, that much. There we go. I remember feeling irritated and annoyed just because, like, one of the people who were toxic in that household kept, like, talking to me in a disrespectful way. So I was just trying to keep my cool. And I remember just, like, having this weird, like, feeling. I can't really describe it. If this makes sense, I'm sitting in the car, I have my phone in my hand, and I'm not looking up, but I'm looking like this. And I can still see, like, the front door, like, in my peripheral vision. Did I say that right? And next thing you know, I see a super tall black thing with a hat standing on the left side of the door. It was there for a good 5 seconds, and when I looked my eyeballs up, it was gone. On this specific street, I've seen a lot of paranormal activity. Like, one time I seen a man walking behind the car, and I asked my mom if she seen that, and then nobody was there. It's like he vanished in thin air. That's another story for another time. So I kind of like shook it off. And then I looked back at my phone, and maybe like, I want to say like about 40 seconds later, I see something in white. Oh my gosh, something in white standing on the right side of the door. I'm gonna add these weird like foamy like ball thingies in here. And they were about the same height, and they were looking directly at me. And it was strange because when I looked up, this time it didn't disappear, and it was just looking at me. And when I looked back down and looked up again, it was gone. But I seen both the black and both the white. Oh my gosh, I have goosebumps. My arm is so hairy, you're not gonna be able to see it. And they were just like staring in the way of the door. And in my head, the first thing that I thought is, there's a lot of death that's going to be happening in that house, because someone had already died in that house years before, and then that house held so much negative like energy. It was super toxic, and the fact that I seen like something black on the left side of the door and then something white on the right, like I was like, okay, like God, get me out of here. And people ask me, am I freaked out when I see like ghosts? It depends. Like, I feel like each ghost has a different feeling, and I've definitely been freaked out before. That time, like, I was only freaked out when I seen the black thing because it scared the light. Like, it scared me subtly. But then, like, after the white thing appeared, like, it didn't, like, scare me anymore. I don't know why this isn't activating, but I cannot use any more activator. So I'm just going to try to activate it with my hands. And if I have to, I'm lying. I'm going to use some more activator. Because, like, I'm not going to be sitting here all day waiting for this to activate. So, yeah. Anyways, that's the time when I think I saw the Grim Reaper, because guess what, like literally a couple, like I want to say like a week after that, somebody who was just in that house died. So it was just like, oh, like, okay, what's happening? What's gonna happen to me? Okay. So yeah, this is the slime. I'm gonna like finish meeting it and then I'm gonna come back. I'm literally so goated for this. Look, yeah, it's still sticky, but not as sticky, you know? It's like not as sticky. But this is this blue slime. I tried to make it like this iceberg slime. Let me know if y'all want some more of my creepy, scary stories. I'm back, and I'm back for good. That was so cringy. That felt like freaking Disney Channel. Okay, bye, y'all.
The following story happened in León, Guanajuato. So this girl says that what she's about to explain happened to her aunt, but everybody in the family is basically involved. They all are not like 100% skeptics, but she does say that they do know that there are things out there that cannot be explained. However, this is something that they continue to think about even till this day. So around 20 years ago, this man named Guadalupe, which is the husband of her aunt, ended up going to the United States because he wanted to find a better job to support his family. She explains that back then they were really poor, so that was the only way that he can get money to her aunt, and he unfortunately had to leave his daughter and his wife behind. So after he left to the US, time has passed, and unfortunately Guadalupe stopped getting in contact with her aunt. It got to the point where she wasn't getting phone calls from him and she did not hear anything about him at all. Because of this, she was becoming very desperate, and she decided to do something that has left the family thinking if this could be true or if this really happened. The aunt ends up going to this lady who did brujería. This lady was well known because she did a lot of dark magic. Apparently, this lady asked the aunt to make this little doll that would represent Guadalupe. With this doll, she was supposed to ask something for a favor, and the family who's telling the story think that the person that they were going to ask for this favor was death. The aunt ended up asking this thing to bring Guadalupe back to her. Apparently, the lady had told the aunt that she was gonna have to pay with something if her wish was granted. The aunt and this bruja knew what she put on the line for this favor, but the family, they don't know what basically said she would give death or whoever it was. 3 days after she does this, almost like magic, or some may say was brujeria magic, Guadalupe got in contact with the aunt and he actually returned back to Mexico to be with her. However, the aunt, after he returned, she just thought that that lady was full of it. Like, it was just a coincidence that he had called and came back, and it wasn't like the black magic that they did. So she didn't keep up with her end of the deal. And one night she had like a really bad nightmare. However, she said she doesn't think it was a nightmare because she wasn't fully asleep when this happened. In her nightmare, she could see a really dark shadow that was talking to her. Apparently, this thing sounded like an animal. It was growling, and then she heard when it said, "You didn't keep your promise. And now I'm gonna take something that you love." She ends up like getting jolted awake, thinking that maybe she just had this dream because of her fear, because she knew that she wasn't gonna go back to that lady again, and it was all in her head. Unfortunately, 3 days later, one of the uncles, which is like the youngest uncle in that family, ends up getting into a car crash and he passes away. He was barely even 20 years old and everybody was so upset, but the aunt, she felt so guilty. She knew that this was because of her, because she didn't hold up her end of the bargain. Now, the girl who's telling us the story, which is the niece of the lady, her and her family, they really don't know if this is exactly what happened or if this is why everything happened. But they do share this story as a warning because it is very obvious that you shouldn't mess with things that you know nothing about. This is fucking terrible, but can I just say, she did this for a man that obviously didn't want to talk to her again. He's probably had another girl in the US. What the I could never do something like that. I don't even give a fuck. Like, what did you even give up? Like, what was the other thing that she promised? And she was like, he's here with me, so I don't care anymore. What the fuck? I don't know if you guys believe in this thing. I definitely do believe in things like this, but let me know what you think in the comments.
Call Corey wrote in. He said he hooked up with an actress in 2006 and she had a number of strange things in the mini fridge in her hotel room. It's always fun when I get to start a spooky scary story off with a disclaimer. This is one of those stories. If this resembles any certain type of person, can't prove the validity of this story. These stories could come from anyone. Don't come for me. I'm not making any allegations. I'm not going to use a person's name. Okay, now that we've got that all out of the way, he says this is 100% true. He's told this to a few people and everybody that he's told thinks he's crazy. But now, with the release of a certain set of files, it doesn't seem so far-fetched. So he was in Shreveport, Louisiana in 2006. He was gambling. He was at a casino. On the third floor of a casino boat playing poker on a Saturday night, as he often did. And there was a party happening in an adjoining room. He could hear the DJ from the party playing music, but knew it was a privately rented room, so he couldn't do anything about it. He just went about his poker game. There had been a murder mystery being filmed in Shreveport, Louisiana, where this story takes place. The film had just wrapped, and he found out that the party in the adjoining room was the wrap party for this film. There was security everywhere. It was very VIP. It was absolutely not open to the public. Cool. He's not concerned. He's happy to play his poker game. But around 11 p.m., it is announced that this very famous, very beautiful actress is entering the room. And everybody cheered. And he said the reason she was entering was because she had to use the restroom. And the restroom was shared between the two rooms and the adjoining deck. She had to walk through this poker room or something to get to the bathroom. And he said he had just taken a bathroom break. And he was coming out of the restroom as she was entering the women's restroom. As they passed in the hallway, they locked eyes. He said hi and she smiled at him. And he said, he's not even gonna lie, he was fanboying hard because she was gorgeous, but her bodyguard was right outside the bathroom and he was keeping a watchful eye, so he just kept it moving. He was still slowly walking back to the table because he was hoping that she would come out of the bathroom so that he had another chance to talk to her, because he said that he felt, as they locked eyes, that there was chemistry. As he was almost back at his poker table, he says he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turns around. She's standing there. She's like, hey. And they start talking. And it was just kind of the three of them. It was her, him, and then the bodyguard standing a few feet away. After a minute of her asking him about him asking her about her, she invites him back to the party in the private room. And of course he says yes. So he goes, and he said it was filled with other people that were in the movie, stagehands, directors, everybody involved. And they had a great time at the party. He said, for reference, he also doesn't drink or use any type of substances. This is important, but he says that they spent hours talking and hanging out and laughing at the party. And after a few hours, the party was winding down, but they were still talking. And the bodyguard, by the way, never left their little bubble. He was always just a few feet away. Said he was absolutely in awe that she was paying him attention, even though he did feel like there was chemistry. But he was just like, I always thought she was gorgeous. I never thought that she would give somebody like me a chance. And this is the part that he says everybody questions his story. Nobody believes him anyway, but he says that she invited him back to her hotel room. Of course, he says yes again. They are followed by the bodyguard. They leave the party. They get back to the room. She's sort of hanging on him because she had been drinking, and he said she was slightly intoxicated. But they get back to her hotel room, and there was an adjoining room for the security guard, and it had like the door in the middle. So the security guard went in his room, but they left the door open. She told him that she needed to shower and would he mind waiting. He says yes. He sat on the bed. She comes out of the shower in a towel. She motions for the bodyguard to close the adjoining door. He does. They talk for a little while. They do a thing. They ended up laying around, laughing and talking for the majority of the night until about 5 a.m. when she tells him, hey, I think it's time for me to wind down. I'm actually getting pretty tired. I want to go to sleep. He's like, okay, no problem. He's trying to gauge if she wants him to stay or if she wants him to leave. And she goes to the little mini fridge cooler. And this is what boggles his mind because she opens it up. He says inside were packs of blood and packs of what appeared to be beef jerky. He said the packs were the exact same as they take when you donate blood. And he said he must have looked shocked, and she saw the look on his face and she just brushed it off. And she was like, oh my gosh, it's no big deal. Everybody does this. It's necessary. We do a lot of things that normal people would think are disgusting, but anyone who has sealed the deal has to do this. He's like, seal what deal? And she's like, I've already said too much, but just know that it gets tiring. He says she also mentioned at some point that she was a lot older than people assumed that she was. I'm not sure the context of that conversation in which that happened. So he said after she told him this, he was floored and he didn't know what to say or do. And she actually offered him some of what she was having. Said he politely turned it down and she was just like, no worries, it's okay. So she did tell him something to the effect of, well, you're missing out. And he says that they cuddled. He wanted to leave, but he was like too afraid to. And he didn't want to appear weird to her after he had just revealed all of this to him. I don't know. They cuddled. She ends up falling asleep. He said he did like talking to her. She talked to him like she had known him her entire life. She felt very comfortable, like they had been lovers. And he said that eventually she just said goodnight and fell asleep in his lap. He waited until he was sure that she was completely asleep. He covered her up and then he went to leave. But as he tried the door, he realized it was locked somehow from the outside. And he started banging on the door, and the bodyguard in the adjoining room came in and he said, is she asleep? And he said, yes. The bodyguard says, are you leaving now or when she wakes up? And he says, I'm going to leave now. And the bodyguard says, good call. But before you leave, I need your identification. Corey's like, what? And he says, yeah, I need you to sign an NDA. You will sign before you leave. He said it was not being offered as an option. Said the bodyguard, while seemingly nice, was also very firm, and so he just said, sure, no problem. And he followed him into the adjoining room where there was an NDA on the table, which he signed. He also took a picture of his ID, and he says after that happened, a third person entered the room, and it was a lawyer type woman. She was reading him a bunch of legal jargon, gave him another form to sign, which he said he was in such a hurry to leave, he just signed it. And then they said, we're going to have some people take you to your truck in the parking garage. And this also freaked out Corey because he had not mentioned anything about his truck or where it was parked. But 3 other men came in the room and they seemed like bodyguard types. They walked him to his truck in the parking garage. And when they get to his truck, one of the men opens up the door and says, have a nice day. And he does this. And he puts his finger over his lips as if to indicate to hush. Inside the truck, there was a copy of the NDA that he had signed pinned to his visor. He said, I have no idea how they got inside. I had the keys the entire time. But as I pulled out of the parking garage, another black truck followed me out and followed me for about a mile down the interstate. He was super freaked out upon getting home. He said he could not sleep. He took a shower. He ate some food and finally ended up going to bed around 4 or 5 p.m. the next day. And he slept forever. He said when he woke up, he was completely exhausted. After this experience, he said he had nightmares for weeks, and he says, I don't care if anyone believes me. This is 100% true. While the nightmares finally stopped, I will never, ever forget this. He says he still has a copy of the NDA in a safe vault.
Let's read one of your scary stories. When I was around 7 years old, my parents would take me and my brother to visit my grandmother's house quite often. My mom always wanted us to stay close with our extended family, no matter how far apart we lived, so we would drive over almost every weekend. Living in my grandma's house were both of my maternal grandparents, my aunt, her husband, and my cousin. At the time, I didn't know much about my cousin's beliefs, but looking back, I know she was always skeptical of the Christian upbringing our family had. Even as a kid, she was fascinated by paranormal topics and would experiment with things like Ouija boards because she found them interesting. I'm not a religious person myself, so I don't judge her for that, but I genuinely believe she may have brought something into that house, even if she never intended to. There was always something that felt wrong about that place. One weekend, we stayed late enough to spend the night, which was pretty normal for us. After it got dark, my cousin, my brother, and I started playing tag throughout the house. We were running from room to room, chasing each other everywhere. At some point, my brother got separated from us, and my cousin ended up chasing me into the garage. The garage wasn't very large. Aside from some old packed boxes stacked around the room, the only major thing in there was my aunt's car parked in the middle. Once we got inside, we split up. I ran to the left side of the car while my cousin ran to the right. We started crouching below the windows and then popping back up to look at each other, each waiting for the other person to make the first move and run. Then something changed. I ducked below the window again, and all of a sudden, I felt strange. It was as if some kind of unnatural presence had entered the room. My stomach dropped instantly, and I felt a deep sense of dread that I couldn't explain. The atmosphere in the garage suddenly felt wrong, though I had no idea why. I tried to ignore the feeling, peeking back up at my cousin's side of the car, but when I looked, I didn't see her. I saw something else. Through the window on the opposite side of the garage, I saw a completely black, shadow-like figure silently gliding past the car. It had the shape of a person, but there were no visible features or defining details. As it moved, I noticed something even stranger. The outline of its head and back seemed to ripple and roll, almost as if it were on fire. Dark wisps trailed behind it as it passed by. The figure never spoke. It never turned toward me. It simply glided across the garage while I stared at it in complete confusion. Instinctively, I dropped back below the window. Before I could look up again, my cousin suddenly sprang from her hiding spot and ran out of the garage. Without looking back, I immediately chased after her. At the time, I wasn't particularly frightened. I was more confused than anything else, but looking back on that experience now, it genuinely terrifies me. To this day, I have no idea what that figure was or whether my cousin saw it too. What makes the memory even more unsettling is that every time I visited my grandmother's house since then, I felt the same sensation. That same feeling that something is wrong there. I can't explain it, but the house has never felt completely normal to me. Sometimes I wonder if whatever I saw that night is still there somewhere, and sometimes I wonder if I was the only person who ever saw it at all.
Have you ever seen clothes out of the corner of your eye and they sort of look like a person? And for a few seconds, you think that there's someone standing there next to your bed. This happens to a lot of people. And most of the time, they think it's just some sort of optical illusion, not realizing there could maybe be something supernatural to it. Now, there was this girl named Katie. Katie said that she didn't really believe in the paranormal until one night that all changed. So during this time, she was living with her parents and she worked the late shift. She said one night she got off of work, she made her way home, and she pulls in the driveway, she goes inside. She said as she walked through the hallway, she looked in and seen that her parents were asleep. So she immediately goes into her bedroom, she lays on the bed, and she falls asleep. After about an hour, she wakes up, and she starts kind of stretching. She opens her eyes, and as she looks at the foot of her bed, next to the closet, she thinks she sees a man. This tall, skinny man just standing there. So she kind of rubs her eyes and adjusts them a little bit. And as she looks again, she could see it's just a pile of clothes. So she's instantly relieved, a little freaked out, and she kind of lays her head back down. But then something tells her to look again. And this time when she looks, once again, she sees a man standing there, this skinny, pale man. And so she looks again, but this time it's clothes. And every time she would look at this thing, it would look like clothes, and then it would look like this man. And each time, it would look like it was moving closer. Until finally, she turns, she looks, and she sees this man sitting on her bed. He's turned around, facing the closet, hunched over, his head slightly staring at her. And she could see he's this bald man. And he was pale and skinny. He had these spindly little fingers and these sharp, jagged teeth. Where his eyes should be, there was just these big holes, these sockets. And she just felt overwhelmingly dreadful. And she said that's when she heard a voice inside her head. It said, "Katie, come with me, Katie. Katie, come with me." And just over and over again, it kept telling her, "Come with me." And she watches this thing slowly lift up its spindly fingers, and she sees that it has these sharp nails. And it's kind of beckoning to her to get up out of bed and to follow him. But right at that moment, all of a sudden the lights turn on, the door opens, it's her mom. And her mom goes, "Katie, are you okay? You know, like, what's going on?" She goes, you seen that?" She's like, "Seen what?" She's like, "I came into your bedroom because I heard you screaming. And I thought something was wrong." And that's when Katie realized, like, okay, her mom didn't see that, but I must have been dreaming. Until she looks over and she sees the clothes hanging over on a chair by the closet, and it looks like a person. There's something happening in the forest across America. Over the past couple of years, I've been documenting people having these encounters with things like crawlers, walkers, wendigo, black-eyed children, witches, not deer, and even mimics in the forest and desert across America. At first, I thought they were just stories people made up to scare people. But then I started to realize these encounters are real. People are really experiencing something, and no one else is talking about it. Now, there was this man named Randy. Randy grew up his whole life in Tennessee in the Appalachian Mountains. And he always felt like those woods were alive and always trying to lure him in. Now, his first encounter with the Appalachian Mountains was when he was a young boy. He was playing out on the schoolyard one day. It was recess, and next to the schoolyard was this set of woods. And as he was looking out over towards the woods, he sees his grandfather. And he's excited because he hadn't seen him in a long time. And he just sees his grandfather smiling and waving at him, beckoning him to come into the woods. So he starts to walk towards him. But then he feels his teacher pull him back. His teacher says, "Randy, what are you doing?" And he says, "Over there, my grandfather." And when he points, his grandfather is gone. So later that day, when he gets home from school, he runs inside his house. And he says, "Mom, Dad, where's Grandpa? I seen him at school." But his parents look at him confused. And they say, "Your grandfather is 800 miles away." Well, many years passed, and Randy gets married and has a family. And they end up living on this farmhouse, which has 2 1-acre lots situated up against the woods. So one night, he's in his kitchen, and he said his beagles, they started barking at him like they wanted him to do something. And as he looks down at them, they are sort of moving their head and kind of pointing to the back door like they want him to open it. So he thinks they need to be let out. He walks over to the back door, and he opens it. But as he looks back at his 2 dogs, he sees them start backing up and then sit down, like they are scared to go any further. She said, okay, come on, dogs, let's go outside. So he opens the screen door, and when he steps 1 foot outside, he looks over. There's the neighbor's dog. And the neighbor's dog starts barking at him and turning his head towards the woods, like he wants him to look in that direction and go over there. So he takes 2 steps, and he gets to the edge of the porch, and he starts looking off into the forest. And that's when he sees between 2 trees this set of eyes staring at him. And they would blink, and they would open, they would close. And he just started staring very deeply at these eyes. And he felt himself almost go into this trance. And he starts saying to himself, I need to go into the woods. I have to go into the woods. And he felt his leg want to move forward. But he was fighting it. He was fighting the urge to go into this forest. And he said all he could think about was just going in that direction, heading out into the woods. And that's when he notices the grass started to lay down, like it was almost making a trail directing him right towards the spot. And he felt his leg pick up, and he started to move forward, when all of a sudden his wife grabs him. It's Randy, what are you doing? You need to get back inside right now. Like, do not go into the woods. So Randy follows her. He goes back into the house. And he said, I don't remember, like, going to the woods. And, I don't remember what happened. And his wife said, yeah, you were 1 step away from going into the forest when I seen you. And you just kept saying over and over again, I go into the woods. I go into the woods. I go into the woods. And I knew that if you went into the woods, something bad would happen. Well, not too long after this, he's working late one night. He comes home, pulls in the driveway, gets out, he goes inside. Well, he starts yelling for his wife, and he doesn't get a response. So he starts looking for her, and he realizes she's nowhere in the house, and he has no idea where she's at. But then he hears a sound coming from the back door. And as he goes to the back door, he can see the screen door is, open. And he looks out into the woods, and there is his wife standing facing the forest. So he opens the door and he goes, honey, what are you doing outside? And she goes, Randy, come on, let's go into the woods. Come on, Randy, let's go into the woods. Randy, come on. And he almost followed her, but then he realized, something is off about this. So he goes back inside the house, closes the door. After about 15 minutes, he hears the front door open. When he goes to check, he sees his wife. And he says, what were you doing outside? And she goes, what do you mean? I wasn't outside the backyard. And he said, yeah, I seen you staring at the forest. Are you trying to mess with me? She goes, no, honey, I was over at the neighbor's house talking to his wife, getting a pie. And he sees this pie in her hands. And that was when he realized, the woods were trying to lure him in. And not too long after this, he forever moved away from the Appalachian Mountains.
My roommate started to sleepwalk every single night, but one morning she asked me why I was standing over her bed. So some backstory, a few years ago I lived in a small apartment with just one roommate, and everything was fine the first couple of months, and then the further we got into living together, that's when I noticed around 3 a.m. I would hear movement outside of my bedroom. And I'd open my door and I'd go through the hallway and I would see my roommate, and she was in different places each time, but this time she was in the kitchen. This was the first time I realized that she slept walk, and she was standing in the kitchen, just standing very still. At first I thought she was awake, but I could tell something felt a little bit weird, and so I said her name really quietly. And then she turned around and I noticed that her eyes were closed. So I was like, oh, she's sleepwalking. I've never witnessed this before, in person, in real life. And so I was more confused than scared. So I walked her back to her room, and then the next day she apologized and she said, I'm so sorry, this only happens when I'm really stressed. It's only happened a few times. I didn't think much of it at the time, but then after that I got more and more frequent. And each time, I'd go out in the hallway, she'd just be standing in the hallway. Or she'd be sitting at the kitchen table in complete darkness, totally silent, asleep. And every single time I would guide her back into her bed, and then, yeah, that was that. But there was this one morning where she woke up and she asked me, she was like, why were you standing over my bed last night? I just kind of laughed and I was like, oh, it was probably just part of your dream. And she looked genuinely unsettled, and she said, no, like, I woke up part of the night and you were standing beside me, like by my bed. And the part that got me was I know that the night prior, I didn't wake up at all. I was in my bed the entire night. I brushed it off, but then after that conversation, I started to lock my bedroom door at night because I got a little creeped out. And a couple nights down the line, I heard knocking, and it wasn't at the front door, it was at my bedroom door. And it was 3 knocks. I just assumed that it was my roommate sleepwalking again. So I got up and I opened the door, and nobody was there. The hallway was empty, the doors were locked, nobody was in the kitchen. So I go over to my roommate's room, and it's cracked open. So I kind of go in, and I see my roommate, and she's dead asleep. I remember just sitting there trying to process it, like if I was imagining the knocks. Pretty sure I was not. And as I was standing there, I heard another knock, but this time it was behind me, and it was coming from inside of the kitchen. So I turn around, and I see a figure standing in the dark by the kitchen counter. It was the same shape, same height as my roommate. I backed into my bedroom, and I slammed the door shut, and I locked it immediately. The next morning, I brought it up to my roommate, and she went completely pale. And then she admitted something to me that she's never said to me before. She said back when she used to live with her older roommate, her roommate used to complain about a figure that looked like her standing over her when she was in bed. And she thought it was her roommate until both of them have saw this figure at the same exact time.
Let's talk about some of the theories that I've seen from people about who the Broward serial killer could possibly be or what could be going on. One of the easiest theories I've seen to disprove is that Gerard Schaefer was the Broward serial killer. One of the easiest ways to disprove this is Gerard Schaefer died in prison 30 years ago. He was actively hunting girls and women, like I had said in my last video, but he was apprehended in 1972. The Jane Does that I'm talking about from the 70s were in 1973 and 1974, and then they stopped until the 80s. Again, Gerard Schaefer was already in prison by then. The timeline doesn't match up whichever way you look at it. Gerard Schaefer also had a very clear MO with pretty much all of his murders. He would kidnap hitchhikers, usually, take them to isolated locations, whether it was on Hutchinson Island, in Port St. Lucie, Broward County sometime. He would tie them to trees or tie them up in mangroves and rape them, torture them, kill them, and then leave them there. Schaefer simply never left the bodies of his victims in water. They were never found in canals. He was way too into sadomasochism and bondage and all of that to simply leave their body in a canal without even ligature marks on them. I also realize I've never talked about Gerard Schaefer in depth on here before, so I think I will do that next. He is one of the most well-known Florida serial killers, so I understand why people automatically jump to him when I talk about cases, especially from the 60s and 70s. But again, it just doesn't make sense if you look at it logically. The next thing that I keep seeing is that it's multiple serial killers and that I'm just connecting the dots where there aren't any. And like, these people obviously didn't actually watch my video because I tried pretty thoroughly to connect the dots. And I don't really understand if they're saying that there are multiple serial killers in South Florida or Broward specifically that have the same MO, the same victim type, and have just been hunting like side by side this whole time. I don't get if that's what they mean or if they are following up on the father and son theory that I mentioned. I don't know. But the idea that there are multiple Broward serial killers that have the same MO, hunting the same type of girls and women, is even scarier to me. Like, how is that comforting? I don't know. Anyway, I don't buy that one personally. There have been multiple famous serial killers in Florida. Samuel Little, Eileen Wuornos, Ted Bundy was ultimately apprehended here, and plenty others. And pretty much none of them had the same MO as this person to leave the body in water. I know Northerners or out-of-staters think Florida, oh, it must be common for bodies to pop up in canals all the time. It's really not, unless there are multiple bodies popping up in water that have other connections, which is why I say there's a serial killer in Naples. The theory that I saw commented that actually made me pause the most was that it is a motorcycle gang that is doing this. That is somebody who actually knows what they are talking about and has looked into South Florida cases in the past. However, it is not safe for me to talk about that theory for a number of reasons, so unfortunately, it's kind of a dead end as far as content goes. But that person definitely does know what they're talking about. I'm not saying that these cases in particular are linked to motorcycle gangs, but they have been responsible for murders that have taken place and kidnappings that have taken place in Florida. Finally, it wasn't many people, but I did see a few commenting that true crime has rotted my brain. I'm just, ultimately making shit up. There's no logical reason for me to be talking about this, whatever, and that I should spend my time advocating for missing women instead. Hi, my name is Cam. I talk about missing cases in Florida pretty regularly. But also, before I made videos on the internet about scary stories and true crime cases in Florida, I was a heroin and pill addict and a crack addict. I was homeless in South Florida, and I was almost trafficked twice. I got out of that life because I was one of the lucky ones, but there are a lot of girls and women that I met personally who did not make it out. So, watch your fucking tone when you talk to me, maybe.
At night when you're turning off the lights in the house and you get to that last light, and as soon as the light turns off, you start seeing things, you start hearing stuff. So you take off running as fast as you can and you lock yourself in your bedroom. That's probably happened to you thousands of times. It's happened to me. But what is it about turning off the lights at night that makes it so creepy and terrifying? Now, there was this man named Christopher. Christopher was from Columbus, Ohio. And he said this one summer, him and his family moved into this very old home. And he said one of the things about this home was he didn't like it at night, especially when it was dark. But his father was very particular about turning off the lights at night. And so because he was the last person to go to bed, he always had to go downstairs and shut off all the lights throughout the house. So he said one night he had left several lights on downstairs. So he goes down there and he starts turning off lights. He said he got to the last light, which was the living room, dining room area. And as soon as the light turned off, he began to hear some noises. He said it sounded like footsteps running around in the living room. And out of the corner of his eye, he could see the shadow of something moving. So he ran as fast as he could to his bedroom, and he slammed the door shut. And he hears these footsteps coming down the hallway, all the way up to his bedroom. And he thought for sure whatever this was going to come in his room. But it was quiet. There was nothing. And this happened every single night, where he would have these weird experiences after he would turn off the lights. He told his parents about it. They didn't believe him. They thought he had an active imagination, but he knew that there was something going on in this home. Said another night he went downstairs and he shut off the lights. And he said as he was making his way through the dark, he ran into something. And he physically felt whatever it was that was moving around in the living room bump into his side and knock him over. And so he started to scream. His parents come downstairs. They turn the lights on. And they're like, what's going on? And he's like, something ran into me, like something is down here. Once again, they yelled at him, told him to go to bed and stop making noises. And he just really didn't know what to do except run to his bedroom every night. So he said finally he got fed up. And he's like, you know what? Tonight, when I go and turn the lights off, after I turn the last light completely off, I'm going to flip it back on and see what this thing is. So he went downstairs and he went to the living room, dining room, and he turned the light off. And as soon as the light went off, he could hear the footsteps and he could see this thing moving. And as soon as he hits the light switch up, back on, he looks and sees a pair of legs running around without an upper body. And he screams and runs to his room as fast as possible. And he said eventually they moved out of that home. But he definitely thought that it might have been haunted. Eastern Kentucky is a scary place at night. That's where all of your stories of the Appalachia come from. Now, when you think of Deliverance, Hills Have Eyes, they are talking about Eastern Kentucky because that stuff really happens there. There are stories of people picking up stranded motorists only to get ambushed or taken or unalived, right? There is these inbred hillbillies that live out in the woods. They call them feral people. There are ghosts, witches, and all of these supernatural entities that reside in this area. And if you're ever driving in this area at night, you will notice just how dark it gets because of all the thick trees and the brush. You can literally not see in front of your face. And there is also places where it is very remote. There's no cell service. And you are just talking about an area that's overall creepy. Now, there was this man named Ray. Ray said he lived on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. And one night he got a phone call from his sister. She was having some really bad problems with her boyfriend and she needed picked up immediately. So Ray left his house in the middle of the night to head to Lexington, Kentucky. And he said the road he had to take cut through a place that his mom called the bad country because a lot of shady things happen in this area. So as he's driving down this highway, it is basically a 2-lane highway cutting through the hills and the mountains, just thick forest all around him, and you can barely see the road. Well, he had been driving for probably about 45 minutes when he said he started to notice something up ahead in the road. So he slowed down almost to a roll. And he said that's when he could see this old man standing right in the middle between the 2 lanes. And he said he could tell he was wearing some sort of bib overalls. He was very skinny. He had no shoes on. And he couldn't figure out how this old man had got there. So as Ray came to a stop, this old man came running up to his car. So Ray slightly rolls down his window. And as the man gets over to the driver's side door, he starts sticking his fingers through the crack of the window. And he starts trying to rip the window out. And he's screaming and yelling like, help me, you gotta help me. He's coming, please help me. Right now, I need help. Let me in the car. And he said this guy was just trying everything to get into his vehicle, get into the driver's side door. And he told him like, look, man, I can't help you. I can't help you. He looks down at his phone and he realizes he doesn't have any cell service. He said this guy just became more and more violent. Well, as he looks out the window and he looks down, it's when he noticed this man's lower half had changed. It was completely covered in this thick fur, and it looked like dog legs. And he could see these big paws with sharp nails hitting the ground as it was trying to get into the car. He said this guy slowly transformed into almost this dog wolf-like creature, and he began thrashing the vehicle. He rips off the driver's side mirror. He puts dents in the side of his vehicle, and then he climbs up onto the top of his car. He said that's when he was trying to basically dig or claw through the top of the car. And he could see it actually starting to dent in, like he was making some pretty good headway. And the only thing Ray could think of was, I need to honk my horn and blink the lights to maybe scare this thing away. So he starts honking his horn and flashing his brights. And this must have drew off a deer, because this deer came running out into the road. And whatever this thing was that was on top of his vehicle, it jumped in one jump off of the car, and it took off running towards the deer. And it grabbed the deer and dragged it into the woods. And so Ray got out of there. But he said he noticed as he was driving that he was completely saturated because he had basically urinated on himself because he was so terrified. Now, there was another story in a place in eastern Kentucky called Eagle Lake. And there's all these different hiking trails. Now, there's been a lot of weird stories that have came out of this area. But one such story that stood with me was these girls who were on a cross-country trip. And they happened to be at Eagle Lake doing a cross-country meet. And as these girls were running down this trail near Eagle Lake, they see this man in a all black suit with a black hat on. And this man started to chase them along the trail. And they began to scream and run as fast as they could. And this man kept pace with them for about a half a mile. And then they said he just disappeared. And when the girls finally made it back to where the finish line was, they were in tears. They were terrified. And everybody gathered around them and started asking, what happened? What's going on? And they told them about this man that had chased them. And one of the guys who worked for like the park district or something, he asked very, like he was afraid. He says, was this man that chased you, was he wearing, an all black suit? And they said, yeah, that's exactly like what he looked like. And the man said, we've seen this guy many a times, but we don't know who he is. So what do you think? Is eastern Kentucky a very terrifying place? What would happen if you followed a mimic? Now, I've always wondered this, because you hear these stories of someone hearing like their mother knocking at the door or telling them to come in the kitchen. But what would happen if you actually listened to the mimic? Here's a story that might tell you why you should not follow a mimic. There was this young man named Aiden. Now, Aiden lived with his grandfather and his 2 parents. Now, one day, Aiden was hanging out in his bedroom, and he's playing a game. Well, he hears his parents pull in and he looks out the window and sees them getting out of the car, unloading some groceries into the house. So he's like, awesome, man, we're going to have something to eat. So he goes back to his game, and then he hears his mother say, Aiden, come in the kitchen. I got some food. And he, at this time was like in the middle of a battle. So he's like, hold on, Mom, I'll be there shortly. I'm in the middle of a battle. And she goes, come on, Aiden, hurry up, come in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, he said he got a phone call, and it was from his mom. And he's like, why is she calling me when she's in the kitchen? So he picks it up, and his mom's like, hey, honey, we're at the grocery store. Do you want us to get you anything? And he goes, what do you mean you're at the grocery store? You already got groceries. You're in the kitchen. She goes, what are you talking about? We just got to the grocery store. And he looks out the window and sees that their car is not there. And then right at this moment, he hears his mom saying, you better get in the kitchen right now or you're going to be in trouble. You better come eat. And he's like, I got to call you back, Mom. He hangs up. So he goes and he locks his door, and then he calls his mom right back and is like, look, when you get home, call me. I'll help you bring in the groceries. So about 25, 30 minutes later, his mom calls him, and she's like, honey, we're home. Come outside. And he said he was getting ready to go out of his room, but he looked out his window first, and their car wasn't there. So he's like, you know what? I don't know what to do because I don't know who really is my mom right now. So as he's sitting in his bedroom, right, he hears his parents come home and come into the house. And all of a sudden, his mom comes up to his door and starts knocking. And she goes, Aiden, let me in. And he's like, not right now, Mom. And she goes, what are you talking about? Let me in. Unlock this door. Why do you have the door locked? And he's like, no, I'm not opening the door. And his mom goes, all right, I'll just get the key and unlock it. So he grabs this baseball bat that's chilling in his room, and he's prepared for this thing to come in. And at the time, he still thinks whatever, was calling his name in the kitchen, this is them. So he sees the handle jiggle and the door open, and it's really his mom. And he can tell that it is actually his real mom. And she goes, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, nothing. And he sets the bat down. And she's like, you're acting weird and stuff. And there's food in the fridge if you're hungry. So he didn't know what to make of that. What did he just experience? And he didn't feel like he could tell his parents about it. So he decided to talk to his grandpa, who was kind of like his best friend at the time. So he goes to his grandpa's room, and he's like, Grandpa, he's like, have you ever seen something you can't explain? And he goes, what do you mean? And he tells the story about how he thought his mom and dad had came home, he's seen their car and everything, but it wasn't actually them. And the grandpa goes, oh no. And he goes, what's wrong, Grandpa? And he says, well, when I was a young boy, I grew up in a small Polish village near Warsaw. And he said, we had this term that was this long Polish word, but it roughly translated into evil twin. And he said they believed there were these evil spirits that could take the form of anyone and would try and trick you and lure you, out into the woods. So his grandpa said, when I was a young boy, my father had me chopping wood outside. And I hear my grandma's voice coming from the forest. And she's saying, come in the woods. I baked you a pie. Come out here. It's nice and warm. You'll like this pie. And he said, he was so hungry, he almost started to go out into the woods until his father ran and grabbed him and said, get back in the house. And his father locked the door and said, if you hear someone calling you from the woods, don't ever go. Don't respond. So he said, when you encounter an evil twin, as they called it, they will follow you for the rest of your life. And he feared that maybe this thing had followed him here to America. And this is what Aiden had seen. A couple weeks later, his parents are gone, and it's just him and his grandpa. And they're watching this World War II documentary in the living room. Well, all of a sudden, the wind picked up, and a strong breeze pushes the back kitchen door open, and they hear it, open up. So his grandpa's like, I'll go and close the door real quick, and I better lock it so it doesn't blow open again. So his grandpa goes into the kitchen, but after about 10, 15 minutes, he doesn't come back. So Aiden's like, Grandpa, are you all right? He goes into the kitchen, the back door's still open, and he doesn't see his grandpa. He goes throughout the house, he's yelling his name, he doesn't see him anywhere. So he goes out, to the back door, and he's yelling his grandpa's name, he doesn't hear it. So he calls up his parents, and his parents come home immediately, and they call the police, and they do this big search throughout the neighborhood and into the woods. And they end up finding his grandfather in the middle of the woods. He is confused and doesn't know who he is, doesn't know anything, doesn't remember anything. So they bring him back home and everything. Well, Aiden said that, they chalked this up to dementia and said he was diagnosed with like a severe case of dementia. But Aiden, in his mind, suspected, because of the series of events that happened before this and his grandfather going out to the kitchen when the door opened, that this was the evil twin thing that his grandfather had talked about. And he said, although his grandfather had completely lost his memory, from time to time, he would say to Aiden, "Is my brother outside? Is my brother out there?" And he couldn't figure out why, like, his grandfather would keep saying that. And then he realized maybe this thing appeared as his brother, and it lured him, like, into the woods.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. My father has spent his entire life proving people wrong about ghosts, which is why the one story he can't explain is the only one that truly scares me. My father is one of the most logical people I've ever met. He's the kind of person who always has an explanation for everything. Strange noise in the house, pipes. Shadow in the hallway, bad lighting. Someone claiming their place is haunted, overactive imagination. He's a hardcore atheist, a science-minded skeptic, and honestly, kind of ruthless when it comes to debunking paranormal stories. Growing up, anytime I told him something creepy I saw online, he'd immediately tear it apart with logic. So when he told me the story for the first time, well, he was in college at the time in India. Back then, he lived in a cramped little rental house with 7 other students. 8 grown men squeezed into a tiny old house together because it was cheap. The place sat near the edge of town, surrounded by narrow roads, old concrete homes, and tangled electrical wires overhead. Power outages were common, the summers were brutal, and at night, the heat became unbearable. My father said they usually slept with every single window open just to survive those scorching nights. And every evening after classes, he and his roommates would get off a bus and walk the same route home. And every single night, they would pass one particular house. It was a modest 2-story home with a flat rooftop terrace. And on that terrace was always the same girl, young, maybe 16 or 17. And she would always slowly pace back and forth while reading from a textbook. At first, none of them thought much of it, but after weeks of seeing her every evening in almost the exact same spot doing the exact same thing, the group started making jokes about it. One said she was preparing for medical exams. Another joked that she was probably smarter than all of them combined. My father can remember her clearly because she was always there, burned into his memory. And then one night, something changed. It was sometime during the hottest part of the summer, and the electricity had gone out earlier in the evening, so the house was dark, except for the moonlight coming through the windows. Most of the roommates had already fallen asleep, scattered across the living room floor. My father was sleeping near the front window, the one that directly faced the neighboring house across the street. Sometime in the middle of the night, maybe because of the immense heat, or maybe something else, he woke up. Immediately, he realized that something was wrong. The window beside him was shut, completely. That made no sense. Nobody would have closed that window, not in that heat. The air inside the room felt thick and suffocating. Everyone else was asleep, sweating in the darkness, so naturally, my father assumed one of the roommates must have closed it without thinking, so he sat up and unlatched the window. The second he pushed it open, warm night air rushed into the room, and across the street, he saw her, the girl on the terrace. At first, he didn't think anything of it. It looked normal. He's seen her hundreds of times at this point. Just her silhouette pacing beneath the moonlight, back and forth, as always. But the longer he looked at her pacing form, the more he noticed the strange details. The house was completely dark. No terrace light, no bedroom light, nothing. There was no way she could possibly be reading a textbook. Yet still, she held it open in front of her face while pacing. And then he noticed the pacing itself. Wrong. Too fast. Not running exactly, but unnaturally quick. Her movements looked jerky and uneven. My father sat frozen, staring at her, trying to understand what he was seeing. Then suddenly, she stopped moving. As if someone had flipped a switch and shut her off. Immediately, he said it happened so abruptly that it frightened him, and slowly, her head turned. until she was staring directly at him across the dark street. My father told me the feeling that hit him in that moment is impossible to describe. He felt as though whatever was standing over there already knew that he was watching. He said that even from a distance, he could tell something about her face just looked wrong. It was too pale, too empty, and then she smiled. A slow, unnatural smile that seemed to stretch wider the longer that he looked. My father slammed the window shut instantly, hard enough to wake one of his roommates. When they asked him what was going on, my father just lay back down, pretending it was nothing. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. Every few minutes, he glanced toward the window, expecting to hear tapping on the glass or to see her standing outside. But morning finally came. Sunlight filled the house, and eventually, everyone started getting ready for class. My father tried convincing himself that he'd imagined everything that had happened the night before. Maybe he'd just been half asleep. Maybe the darkness distorted what he saw. But while they were leaving the house, one of the neighbors stopped them outside and casually mentioned something strange. Apparently, the family across the street had moved away over a week earlier. The house was completely empty and had been for days. In fact, according to the neighbor, the terrace door had been chained shut ever since they left.
An incubus latched onto me and it nearly destroyed me. Story time. The person who submitted this does not want me to use her name. We're gonna call her Lana. She actually doesn't live very far from where I live. When Lana was about 15 years old, she was at a sleepover with a group of her friends. It was about 4 girls all together. The whole night, they kind of just hung out, watched movies, ate snacks. They were doing facials until one of the girls decided to bring out a Ouija board. At first, Lana didn't really think much of it. As far as she knew, a Ouija board was something you can get from the store, like Walmart or Target, so she didn't really take it seriously and decided to go along with it. Now, the girls decided they were going to really set the scene, so they lit some candles, they dimmed the lights, they put the board in the center, like of the floor, and they all sat around it. Each girl had their hand on the planchette and they started to ask the board like your basic questions. When one of the girls decided to ask the board who they were speaking to, the board spelled out a name, which I'm not gonna say out loud. I'll put the name right here. The minute the board spelled out the name, it was almost like the air got thick and everything got cold around them, and the lights that they had like lit up started to flicker. This really freaked out Lana because to her, this wasn't a game anymore. She decided to kind of break away from like them having their hands on the planchette and said that she didn't want to play anymore. The girls, of course, teased her and they continued on playing with the board and kind of called it a night. They placed the board like on top of the TV and went to sleep. So they didn't even say goodbye to the board. You should always say goodbye to the board. You shouldn't play with the Ouija board, but if you do, you have to say goodbye.
I'm not sure if I can even say this part because TikTok has been so weird lately, but that night she went to bed, had a dream, and in the dream she was paralyzed and she had this man. She said it was the most beautiful man that she had ever seen that was speaking to her, almost like whispering in her ear, saying her name. Then she felt this heaviness on top of her and then woke up completely drenched in sweat.
This continued on every single night. At about 3 a.m. she had the same nightmare, the same feeling. She would wake up completely covered in sweat. It got to the point that she was completely drained constantly and she stopped wanting to even be around her friends. One day, her auntie from the big island decided to come visit her. Her auntie has always been extremely spiritual. The minute her auntie walked into her bedroom, she looked right at Lana and said, "Something is here. Something has attached itself to you." Lana immediately broke down and told her aunt about everything that had happened after she had played with that Ouija board. Her auntie told her that she was going to have to do a cleansing. So that night, they decided to go over near the water. She had some Hawaiian sea salt, which I'm going to get. I didn't even know that was a thing. She also had some tea leaves and then started sprinkling Lana with this water mixture while she started to chant and pray like really, really loud. The louder she prayed and chanted, the more Lana felt like this heaviness come over her. And then out of nowhere, it just kind of lifted and Lana started to just cry uncontrollably because for the first time in a really long time, she felt free. Like she felt like the weight had been taken off of her and whatever was on her was completely broken off. When everything ended, Lana completely collapsed to the ground and soon after she fell asleep. This was the deepest, most calming sleep that she had had in weeks. The dreams went away. She was no longer getting woken up at 3 a.m. The heaviness went away. It was almost like the air kind of came back to her lungs. She never again touched a Ouija board. Till this day, she still sleeps with a pouch of like Hawaiian sea salt next to her bed just in case, because even though her auntie did deliver her from this being that was on her, she still feels like he's lurking. Like he's just like there but not able to grab her, like if that makes any sense.
I tried the elevator game once, and I've never talked about it because I can't explain what happened to me. Hi everyone, welcome back to Kindle at Whispers with Amanda. Today we have an interesting story submitted by a listener about playing the elevator game. This was back in October. My friend and I were staying at a hotel for a concert. We've both seen the videos about the elevator game and thought it would be funny to try it at like 3 a.m. The hotel was older, around 12 floors, and almost empty because it was a weekday. My friend didn't want to do it, so she waited in the room while I went down. I remember laughing at myself because I felt stupid even trying it. I followed the sequence exactly. Nothing weird happened at first. The elevator stopped normally, opened normally, but when I got to the floor, the 5th floor, where the woman is supposed to get on, the doors opened and someone was actually standing there. It was a woman, probably mid-40s, a hotel guest maybe. She had on jeans and a gray sweatshirt and was just standing there looking down at her phone. Totally normal. She stepped in without saying anything. I remember feeling relieved because I made it through the whole thing without feeling ridiculous. I pressed the next floor and just stared at the numbers. Then she said, "Don't look out when the doors open." Just casually, like she was reminding me that I dropped something. I froze. I didn't answer. And the elevator kept moving. I figured she'd seen TikToks about the game, so she was just messing with me. But then the doors opened, and everything outside was dark. No lights off dark, just blank. Like there was no hallway there at all. No floors, no walls, nothing. It looked like the elevator had just opened into empty space. I actually thought the power had gone out for a second, but the elevator lights were fine. The floor numbers were still lit. And the woman next to me said, really quietly, "You looked." And that's when I turned towards her. She was already looking at me, no expression at all, just staring. The door shut after maybe 3 seconds, and the elevator started moving again. I hit the lobby button over and over until my finger hurt. The woman never moved. When the doors finally opened on one, she was gone, like completely gone. There wasn't enough time for her to get out before the doors opened. I would have seen her. I ran back to my room and woke my friend up. She was pissed because apparently I had been gone for 40 minutes. But I was only downstairs for maybe 10 minutes. The weirdest part, the next morning I asked the desk if they had camera footage because I thought someone might have been messing with me. The guy looked, and he told me I was the only person who got on and off that elevator during that time of the night. Wow. That to me that's super scary. I would never play the elevator game just because I don't think it would do any good, or I mean, I don't know if I believe that something bad would happen, but I just don't know if I'd want to risk it anyways. But let me know if you've played the elevator game and something like this has happened to you, but put it down in the comments below.
I think my boyfriend hates me. My boyfriend and I were once very much in love. We were all over each other all the time, and our friends would make fun of us for being so sappy while secretly harboring a burning jealousy for our happiness. I mean, we were the golden couple until we weren't. It felt like everything had changed just overnight. One night we were hopelessly in love, and the next he was like a different man. He wanted nothing to do with me. I mean, we still shared the same bed, but he hasn't touched me in months, so every morning I would wake up first just to hold his hand until he opened his eyes, but then once he did wake up, he would pull his hand from my grip and just ignore me. And while I was in the shower, I would make him breakfast, sometimes eggs, sometimes pancakes, sometimes just toast, but he never ate it. He would just grab an apple and rush out the door for work, leaving his food on the counter for me to clean up. When he was at work, he would ignore my texts, and every night he would come home late, off his mind from an evening spent at the bar, and he would scream and break things, and sometimes he would cry too, which I never saw him do back when he still loved me. But the day I knew for sure that he hated me was the day that a moving truck pulled up in front of our house. I mean, he had discussed moving out and we hadn't officially broken up, but within hours, his stuff was being carted out of the house by movers and he continued to ignore me. While the movers carried out boxes all around him, he sat on the old beaten couch that we used to watch movies on together. And then he pulled a picture out of his pocket. It was the two of us at Disneyland. And he stood at a spot a few meters to the right of me. His eyes started dripping with tears, and he began to speak. And though he wasn't looking right at me, I know that he was speaking to me for the first time in months. He said, "Leave me alone. It's been 4 months since it happened. We both need to move on." So I live in the house alone now without my boyfriend, who no longer loves me. I know he's moving on and will never come back, but I don't know if I can.
Ignore that I look a little busted. I'm a psychic medium, and I have a few haunted items in my house, including a haunted mirror that I haven't figured out what to do with yet. Some weird things have been happening in my house, and I finally got some proof. Besides the infamous mirror, this is my other little haunted trinket. I did a medium session and discovered that the spirit haunting that trinket is named Cecilia. Recently I got this like silly little remote control Krabby Patty SpongeBob car. I decided to play with it last night and everything was completely normal. But today I woke up and it was driving itself, and I got it on video.
Do it again.
Oh my god! I'm literally not touching it. Oh my god! Oh my god, can't move. Can't move! Bro, the remote's literally right here. It was doing it a little bit before I started recording that video, which is why I started recording in the first place. I was hoping that I would catch it, but I did not expect it to do it again as soon as I said, "Do it again." So that was definitely crazy. After the video, I walked away, and then when I came back, I noticed that it had driven itself closer to the salt circle around the mirror. So I moved it. For those of you that don't know, a salt circle is used for protection or to encase a spirit. And immediately I was kind of suspicious. But after I moved it, I walked away to go make myself a coffee. Then I came back, and here it was. So that definitely kind of made me give it the side eye. I'll keep you guys updated, but what do you guys think is going on? And which of my haunted items do you think is the culprit?
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of when my uncle bumped into this ghost child and disappeared. Since 2009 till date, we don't know what happened to him. So y'all, there was a funeral at my dad's place, right? At my dad's grandmother's place, sorry. And you know, we travel using the same road with this particular uncle of mine because we all stayed in the same area, right? If you listen to my story times and you were an OG, you know that every single time me and my dad used to go visit his villages in Limpopo, we always traveled at night. Whether it be me and him or my siblings or whoever, we always traveled at night. So at this point, when we are passing a certain place, I think it was around 11 p.m. at night. So we are passing, once we are driving, and as we are driving, my dad is not driving that fast because you can't drive at high speeds at night, you know. And so as we are approaching this other curve, we see this girl standing. She's wearing pink tights and a blue top. I remember very well. She's wearing pink tights, a blue top, and she's standing there and she looks so scared. She's busy going like this, like she's hiking. And I look at that girl and I feel so bad for her. And I'm just like, I'm looking at my dad thinking he's going to stop, because I was in the front seat, by the way. Because my other siblings would sleep on the road and I wouldn't sleep on the road, because me and my dad would be talking and listening to music sometimes. So I'm sitting in the front seat, I'm looking at my dad like he's going to help the girl. My dad acted like he did not see her. He just looked straight forward and continued moving. So I look at my dad like some horrible creature and I'm like, hey bro, aren't you going to help the girl? He's like, now why would a child at 11 p.m. decide to stand there? And he was like, if that is a missing child, God will help somebody. God will put it in somebody else's heart to save them. He is not the Messiah. He's not doing it. And he passed, y'all. So my uncle now, on the other hand, he said that he's going to work that particular day, because on Saturday I think there was a ceremony or something. He said that he's going to work, so after work he's going to be traveling to Limpopo in the AMs. And remember, in the AM it's still dark, you know what I mean? Around 2 a.m 3 a.m it's still dark. So that's when he said he's going to travel. Cool, we get to Limpopo, it's chilled, it's vibes, whatever. The following day comes, it's daylight. My uncle is nowhere to be seen. You know, I don't think anything of it. I think maybe he's just gonna come later on. The ceremony starts, the ceremony ends. The sun is going down. This man has not come yet. He has not arrived. So now, obviously, like, there's just some sort of panic in my heart, Felt like something was wrong. I go to my grandma. I tell this lady, and I say, mind you guys, this is not my dad's mom, but that's a story for another day. I tell this lady, like, hi, where is Uncle so-and-so coming, because we've been waiting for him, whatever. And she tells me to go play. But then I can hear, man, that there's a certain tension in this room. They're busy talking, and my dad comes in and he's like, I just called his workplace. They say he's off today, like he did not come to work. Where could this man be? So as they're panicking there, they get a phone call. You know me, Mus, I'm nosy. I stand at the door. They get a phone call and they put it on loudspeaker. It's a police officer. The police officer is like, hi, am I speaking to so and so and so? And that was my dad. So in case of emergency, this person, my uncle put my dad's number to, so they called him. Do you understand? Hopefully you understand. So they're like, hi, is this so and so? My dad's like, yes. They're like, listen, we found so and so's car, my uncle's car, at that same bend where we saw the girl. They found the car there, and there is no signs of robbery because his phone is still there, his wallet, everything, even his bag, but he's not there. So now they're kind of getting worried and they decide to go to the scene, right? And I get in the front seats because that's my dad's car number one. Hey, I used to be a brat growing up. That's my dad's car number one and I want to go see, And they tried to tell me to get out and I started crying. And I know one thing about my dad, when you start crying shame, he can never say no to your tears. So I start crying. He's like, I leave the child. So I get in the front seat and then the adults are in the back seat. They start driving. When they get to the place, for sure, the police are there. It's not that many police officers. And they're like, it seems like this person might have, I don't know, like they can't explain. Because the car is on the one side of the road. And then my uncle's footsteps, like when like on the other side, like maybe near the bend, that's where my uncle's footsteps are. And then after that, there's grass. So they don't know where he went. They went into the bushes. They tried to look, whatever, nothing. Fine, they file a missing persons report and the police guys searched, they searched and he was never found. His car was found, everything was found, but he never found. So obviously, naturally, they go consult a traditional healer. And how I know what the traditional healer said was because my dad was telling my mother the story and I heard, you know what I mean? So he's telling my mom and it's like, hey, we went to this other traditional healer and apparently Uncle so-and-so was taken by this child. This child is a child that died, right? And they're using that child spirit to lure people. And apparently wherever Uncle so-and-so is, he's basically gone, like dead. They killed him and they are using his spirit to do like their own things. And basically they have blinded him spiritually so that he can't find his path back home. Like we are never going to see him in dreams that show us where this person is or who took him. Basically what the traditional healer explained was y'all are never going to find him. And if you go to somebody else, they are going to do nothing but waste your time. But you guys can keep trying. You can go to a second person and ask for a second opinion, but that's what she sees. And when I tell you that traditional healer did not lie, guys, because till date, we don't know what happened to my uncle. Also, they did get like a second opinion from somebody, and obviously that person was like, yeah, we need to work or on the car, where his last scent was, in the seat where he was driving. That's where they need to dial things. And that traditional healer came, dial the things. Did anything happen? No. Did we dream about my uncle? No. We never found him till date.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
Let's look at some creepy videos taken and sent in by you. If you're seeing me for the first time, I do a series on my page where I show and discuss your scary stories, pictures, or videos. So if you have something that you would like to share, you can reach me through the email in my bio. I would like to remain anonymous in this story, but last year my fiance passed away, so I was going through a tough time. For a couple of months, I was being bothered by something in our house and it started scaring me more than it should. One night I was drinking and I noticed the presence of whatever it was that was bothering me felt really strong that night. So I slept upstairs on the couch and I left the lights on. Everyone was sleeping already, so I turned on a movie to help me sleep when I heard something coming up the stairs. I grabbed my phone and started recording. I only got 2 seconds of the video, but what I caught was absolutely terrifying. You can see something peeking at me behind the boxes, and it gave me absolute chills. I never saw it again after that night. I was sleeping when I suddenly woke up from a noise. It sounded like there was somebody running outside of my bedroom, but there was nobody there. Outside, we have a light monitor that goes off when it senses movement, and that went off a few minutes later. The light from the monitor shined in through my window and reflected a white face-like figure. When the lights turned off again, it disappeared. To this day, I have no idea what it could be.
And another thing I'm also going to add to the part 2 of the bullying in the paranormal community. You know how I mentioned that people don't treat this like a passion, but more of survival because this is their end all be all with their income. If there's one piece of advice that I could give you or anyone that I was given when I started my journey, especially in the paranormal and paranormal content creating, is do not quit your day job. Do not quit your career, because I was told you're going to need that job, you're going to need that balance, you're going to need that paycheck, you're going to need those benefits, and you're definitely going to need that retirement. Like, what, you think that at 65 I'm striving to have that blue check mark on my tombstone? No, at 65 I want to be retired, living peacefully, happily in the mountains of Honduras with my animals. Trust. Seen people who are literally juggling different types of jobs and having to go from one convention to another, hustling so they could pay their mortgage. I have also seen other content creators who have quit their job thinking, oh, I could do this full time, and then having to go back to their jobs again because it wasn't sustainable. I mean, hello, this app is a beast, especially with its current algorithm. It sucks. If you don't believe me, let me give you a couple examples. Barry Taft is one of them. Do you guys remember Dr. Barry Taft? You know, he was the famous parapsychologist of the Entity case. He's been on a bunch of paranormal TV shows, and during the pandemic, he pleaded on Facebook. This is something he made public. Hi, Lulu, say hi. This is something he made public on Facebook, that he was broke and he was kicked out of his house and he had to be living in hotels that he was about to be kicked out of. Unfortunately, his friends at the Ryan Institute created a GoFundMe I donated to along with other great people, and we helped him in that situation, but unfortunately it wasn't enough. Unfortunately, those good people at the Ryan Institute got him in connection with the program of the city to help him find a place to live. The Warrens, Ed and Lorraine, I believe Lorraine had dementia towards the end of her life. I think it was dementia, I could be wrong, but I know she was very, very sick. And that's why they decided to tour with Annabelle the doll. You don't know that Annabelle did a stint of Italian restaurants in Connecticut, so you can have dinner and listen to her horror stories for like $60 or even $100. You have a plate of pasta with Annabelle. That paid off, Lorraine's medical bills, because towards the end she needed 24-hour care. Not to mention, I just heard that this person in the vampire and witch community was just diagnosed with Parkinson's, and it's pretty aggressive to the point where now they need to rely on GoFundMes. If you know anything about Parkinson's like I do, then you're going to eventually need 24-hour care. I'm very aware that one can make a living doing this, and in the long run, it's like, all for what? Because you bullied a couple of people? And all in all, it should be about the journey and helping people out. Think about that.
My husband asked for a divorce. When he realized I agreed to it, he flipped the script and is now claiming that it was just a joke. He didn't mean it, but I'm taking this too far. Story time. I've been married to my husband and we have got 4 beautiful children together. He came to this country, but then his documentation wasn't all there. I'm a citizen, so I helped him. He was grateful, and this is how we started dating. Then we got married. I worked my ass off. I supported our family. He works as well. Bearing in mind, with 4 children, I still work. I did the housework. I never complained. Then one day we had an argument and he told me that he wants a divorce. I did not react. I did not say anything to him. So he came back after work and he realized I was gone. The kids didn't even realize that I was gone. He tried reaching out to me. I did not even want to answer his call. He went to my parents' house. He could not find me. I wasn't there. Anyway, he went and sat with my parents and he told them that it was just a joke. We were having an argument and he jokingly said that and he didn't mean it. But then I've gone and taken things too far. And he thinks that I actually wanted to divorce and now using this as an excuse. Anyway, months go by. He's now struggling. He can't even look after the children. He's now realizing all the hard work, everything that I did. And he found life too easy. So, he sent me one text message and I just wanted to hear him out. We met, we sat and chat. And he actually confessed, he said, he has been secretly sleeping with this other girl. And the girl sort of made him feel a way that I have never made him feel. So that made him wanted to leave the marriage, but he didn't know how to do it. So after all, it wasn't a joke. It was actually real. But he saw that he was struggling, and he said he realized how much I was doing for this family. He realized how much I was sacrificing for this family. He realized how difficult it is, looking after 4 children and still having to work. Anyway, I told him that I don't care. He has got all the time in his life to go and marry his side piece, because as far as I'm concerned, this marriage is over. That's what he wanted, and he's gotten what he asked for. So why is he bothering me now? But I told him to take the children because I will not be taking them along. I need to live my life. He can do his part as a father. He's the one that wanted this in the first place, so he can deal with it. He said I was being evil. He said he knew that I didn't love our children. Wow. You see how quickly he flipped the script. I told him he can think all he wants. He's not going to get a reaction from me. But my decision is final. His family members, some of them are angry that I have taken this decision. Some of my family members are telling me to reconsider for the sake of the children. But I have had enough, and I just can't do it anymore.
I need you guys to take a look at this picture right here. Take a look at it. If you haven't seen the video of Shakira, like during her performance lately, her concert with like over 60,000 people were there. They were there witnessing what she was doing. Take a look at this video. And what's happening right now is that we are actually digging into the one weakness of Mother Nature, which is technology. And it's available for all of us now that we are able to pinpoint and see exactly what these beings are and how they are trapping us. You may think that this is just a concert, right? That like over 60,000 people actually end up participating and they were fans, right? No, this was an absolute ritual right there, a demonic ritual. I'm telling you. Look at all the signs, all the movement that she was doing. Like you don't even need a book. There are books out there. If you go deep, like you dig deep into like these ancient books that talks about demons and angels and the Nephilim, even UFOs. All the signs that she was doing, you're gonna see like these creatures making all the same signs with their hands, their facial impressions, like hands in the air, doing triangle signs and all of that. And these people were part of it. And there are many reports of these people not feeling the same after the concert at all. They felt lost. Some of them don't even remember being there. And yet, we use Mother Nature, biggest strength, which is technology. That's how we're able to grow things nowadays, right? Even food, even traveling. That we gotta use technology, right? And we're so good at it now that we are able to capture images like this, videos like this, zoom in and zoom out and seeing things like this. We weren't able to do that back in the day. So now they can't hide anymore, and then we seen everything in plain sight. Every movie they put out there, TV shows. Now we can actually pause. We can slow it down and we can see exactly for what they are. And there it is. A very famous, performer. singer, dancer, Shakira. Everyone's a fan, of Shakira. I am. But that doesn't mean that like I'm lost and not seeing exactly for what they are. Music is music. Music ran through us. Music, literally, we use it for everything. We use it to feel good. When we down, we use it to connect. It kind of like it does something to our souls. It kind of like elevate our energy. At the same times, it can actually bring our energy down. It does all sort of things to us. So they're using music mostly to do things like this, to do rituals like this, to manipulate our minds like this, to manipulate and trap our souls and energy like this by doing this. But guess what? We can also use technology to reveal who they are, what they are. And that's what we're doing now. Mother Nature was so good at getting away with it because we didn't have, the ability to tap into her weakness that she's been hiding as strength. Now that we are able to do so, we can see things like this now. So I keep telling you guys, our biggest technology is this. That third eye. Once you open it, these things can't hide from you anymore. Not at all. Not at all.